We're here with Kevin Page. He's head of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, University of Ottawa, former Parliamentary Budget Officer. Kevin, I want to talk to you about the Liberal plan for a strategic review. What exactly is that, and what does it entail?
Yeah, Tony, we don't have a lot of details. There were really just a few lines of it in the Liberal platform, the costed part of the Liberal platform, where they've committed to talk about at least a policy review. And so we've had experience in Canada with different types of reviews. Certainly, like the most famous probably is the program review in the 1990s, which was definitely focused on fiscal consolidation. I think there's an opportunity with the Liberals to kind of look a little bit with some focus on fiscal consolidation, but also really to look like, in the context of their agenda, do we have government policies in place like to deal with net zero economy? Like, are all the policies like firing on all cylinders in order to get to a more inclusive economy? Are we ready for the next pandemic or the next economic shock in terms of resiliency? So, and there's an opportunity to look at the policies and the spending that goes behind it, but we don't have any targets or really parameters around that. And I'm hoping that we see that early rather than later from the government with respect to a budget update.
Yeah, so it's basically, from what you're saying, an opportunity for some structural reforms. So there would be a program review of government programs. You have some, obviously, some things that you want to accomplish, whether they're environmental goals or social equity goals or reconciliation goals, just to name three. So there's some policy initiatives, but they can lead to structural reforms. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, we're hoping that that will be the emphasis of this policy review, as opposed to some of the more traditional spending reviews that had a strong fiscal consolidation focus. A lot of these initiatives, health or First Nations, as you've identified, climate change, they cut across many departments. So to review it in a very cohesive way, you're looking at all departments, those policy objectives. We think like that would be a good practice. Those more horizontal policy reviews. I think involving parliamentary committees, maybe experts from outside of government as well, would be a good practice.
Okay. And are there things that can be learned from previous strategic reviews? You mentioned that in passing, that we've had these before from the 1990s on. Are there some good lessons to be learned from those?
Yeah, I think there are lessons. Like we've just even in my lifetime, Tony, I started at Department of Finance early 1980s under progressive conservative government. We had a deputy prime minister lead a review, the Nielsen reviews. I lived through those 1990 program reviews. I think your government, when you were president of the Treasury Board, launched kind of a more of a systemic kind of like a certain percentage of spending base being reviewed each year. So yeah, I think the good practice, obviously we want buy-in from political leaders, from all the cabinet ministers. It's very difficult for public servants and other experts to kind of put proposals together if the government's not really committed. I think like having a good information base behind these programs, how are they performing, like being truly honest about performance, are they effective, are they efficient programs? I think consulting with citizens while we're doing these reviews to make sure that these programs, they could be transfers, grants, and contributions to people, like they're delivering the services that Canadians want. So yeah, there's a lot of review. There's some best practices, and these are actually compiled by the OECD for OECD countries. So yeah, I think the government will be well positioned to kind of learn from those past experiences.
Are there any sort of downsides and risks when they're doing this kind of review of government programs?
I think you could run a poor review. You could fall far short of your targets if they're fiscal targets, or if you have policy objectives and it's clear that the government is really not making the kind of structural changes, that they need to. I think in that sense, it could undermine the confidence of the government. So yeah, and I think when you're dealing with multiple departments, multiple ministers, like you're involving Parliament potentially in the exercise, if only through the spending appropriation side, that there's definitely this downside risk.
So these are the kinds of things they've got to have to balance then, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act.